All right. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone. Welcome to this PIM Vendors event. We are here today on a PIM Vendors Academy session, and we are going to discuss product information management and enterprise resource planning, ERP. We are going to have a quick presentation. I will start that presentation soon and walk you guys through it. If you have any questions, feel free to drop them into the chat on the right-hand side. I'll try to weave those into the conversation if you have any questions there. If you join late or if you have to leave early, we'll be recording this session in full, so you'll be able to rewatch the whole recording later at your leisure. And feel free to stick around to the end because we have a special surprise and gift for everyone that sticks around. So I would say please do stick around. Quick introduction. I am Stefan Spijkers. I'm co-founder of PIMvendors.com. I've been active in e-commerce for the past 15 years, mostly on the intersection of operations, both internally and externally, and IT. And during that period, I've been working with many kinds of ways of managing product information. About 4 years ago, when I met my co-founder for PIM Vendors, my eyes were open to the world of product information management, dedicated product information management, not just in Excel or in ERP or in a e-commerce system. And today we're going to discuss what I've learned during that journey and also how to make that decision on whether you want to replace your ERP first and then your PIM, or whether you actually need a PIM or not. So without further ado, let's start with the presentation. All right. So PIM and ERP, both are critical systems for data management, and I'll walk you through this session together. All right. So what is the agenda for today? We have the what is PIM and what is ERP introduction. We're going to discuss PIM and ERP and, well, basically where to start when you need to do an implementation or when you need to do a replatforming. We're going to discuss product genesis and product data flow through your organization and through your IT architecture and your process architecture. And in the end, we're going to discuss different setups. How do you want to set up your architecture? So first off, what is a PIM and what is an ERP? So defining product data management and how it differs from transaction management. What is PIM? Let's start with the most important one first. Well, we are PIM vendors, so we should know what PIM is. It is the process and the dedicated tooling, or the name for the dedicated tooling involved in managing your product data. And that managing means onboarding it, it means enriching it and storing it, and it means publishing that data. We'll discuss those steps in turn. It is a highly configurable part of your IT architecture. So it is a tooling that you, I don't want to say select as a vanilla tooling and then configure to your liking. There are definitely differences. That's basically our whole raison d'etre, the reason why we exist. But it is a tooling, even if you find one that fits your puzzle, the puzzle of your organizational architecture exactly right, it still means you have to configure quite a lot. And it is quite adaptable to your own internal process and product data. Selecting the right PIM, therefore, is complex. We'll get to the difference between this and the selection of ERP later. But first, the product information management process, the PIM process. It starts with the onboarding of product data. So during this stage, you get data from various sources. You onboard data from your suppliers, from your own internal systems, and from different data pools, maybe. During that onboarding, you'll have to maybe map that product data. You have to cleanse it, maybe. And you also have to maybe transform that product data. So making sure it moves the dimensions that are now in centimeters or in meters, transform that to inches, for example. Then we go to the next step, enrichment. The most important, or the most, I would say, recognizable step for PIM, for product information management, is the enrichment of the product data. So you have a product, you have it in a certain setting, and now you want to enrich it to make sure it sells and is it sells the best way on all your different channels. You will add a commercial description, you add all kinds of attributes that are missing and that you think will help sell the product. And we'll get to what kind of attributes you could add later. And then you add images, manuals, maybe 3D models as well. And then you publish the product data to all your downstream channels. So that could be your e-commerce store, it could be your app, it can be a print catalog, it can be all kinds of downstream channels. But you need to make sure that it is accepted by those downstream channels. So there is also a mapping stage in the output stage. So you have to map and maybe even transform that product data to match the data model that your customer expects. Or maybe you have to map it to a certain standard, right? So to an eating classification or a GS1 classification. And then on top, we have the workflow management. So you have a PIM, but you want to make sure that there's different stage gates or there's different partners involved in different pieces of that product information management process. And you want to make sure your photographer is able to add photos, but you don't want him to add a German translation, for example, or change the search engine optimized descriptions of all the products. That is all done in the sort of workflow area of a PIM. You manage the rights and roles, you manage stage gates, dashboards. All that stuff sits in the workflow phase or in the workflow piece of a PIM. All right. Then the PIM manages the product data model. So it stores the product data model and it allows you to enrich products to make sure that that product data model is 100% filled. What is that product data model? It is a multi-layered data entity, which is basically has at the core your master data, which is the core data of the product. It could be the product number, the EAN, maybe basic data such as dimensions. I would say basically the data you will find in an ERP system, the master data of that product. And surrounding that core is a layer of rich product data. So that rich product data basically is added in your PIM. And it could be the commercial descriptions, it could be images, could be all the different attributes that you want to add or need to add to sell your product on your downstream channels. That is all done in the rich product data layer. And then there's an outer layer where there's all kinds of interactions or enrichments of the product. So that could be pricing and commercial information that we probably would not recommend doing pricing in your PIM, but you might want to add your price product data, right? A recommended price, for example. You can have customer interactions in there. You can have reviews there. And you can have relations to other products there. So relations to spare parts, upsells, other products, that's all in that outer layer of your product data model. We know all the different PIMs that are out there. You can manage this in quite a lot of solutions. There are more than 250 PIMs active in Europe, and this selection on the slide is the 50 systems that we have in our product information management database, our solution database. We actually have all the 250 systems in a short database, but these are the 50 partners that we have identified that cover the market really well. But yeah, finding the right PIM that manages that product data model for you and manages that PIM model for you as efficiently as possible can be quite challenging. But they can help. Like there's 50 different tools that can help you manage that process. So how does that PIM then interact with other systems? What is the relationship of your PIM to those other systems? We have the input or the onboarding. The ERP brings product data, the PLM brings product data, maybe other sources as well. Those will bring product data into your MDM or into your PIM directly. In this graph, you see it is feeding data into an iPaaS layer, an integration platform as a service layer. So an integration platform that helps you manage all the different connections, right? So instead of having this spaghetti of 60 different connections to 60 different tools, and all the different tools that are connected between themselves. You actually have one connection for each tool, which is to the iPaaS layer and back. That definitely helps to clean up your architecture, but you can also just connect your ERP to your PIM, right? That is no problem in that. It brings that into the onboarding stage of your PIM. You do the enrichment in PIM. There's, of course, the output mapping in PIM, and then it outputs either directly to different downstream channels, so to marketplaces, to mobile apps, to your e-com systems, maybe your marketing feed, or it maps to the iPaaS layer again, right? So you only have one connection in that case to the integration layer. And during that whole process, there could be an integration with your DAM, for example, or an MDM system to really manage that product data well, especially in more complicated or more complex settings. So which different three-letter systems have we identified, and how do they differ? So we have a short list here of just 5. There is the master data management tooling, which is a multi-domain tooling. It can be product data, but it can also be customer data or supplier data. It is internally focused, so focused on just your internal systems or your internal users. And it's a backend tooling focused on operational excellence. You have PIM, obviously, focused only on product data. It says ADA. It is externally focused, so focused on marketing your products and bringing those products to market. Focuses on getting great product content down your omni-channel channels, and it is a merchandising solution. So it focuses really on building that product catalog and enriching that product catalog. There's the DAM, the digital asset management tooling, single domain, so digital assets could be images, most well known, but also fact sheets, 3D models, and it is externally focused as well. So a marketing tool really focused to push the right product, the right campaign, the right geography, the right translation of your images and manuals and assets to the right audience. Then there's the PLM, the product lifecycle management tooling. We saw it in the other graph as well. It is the tool where you can design products, have them in various stages. It is focused on product data only, and it basically manages that whole lifecycle of the product. It's in the name, but from the design and development to production and maintenance, and in the end, even the replacement of that product. That is all managed in the PLM. And then we have the other topic for today is the ERP, so the enterprise resource planning software, where you have a multi-domain tooling, again, focused on customer, supplier, and product data, and even more, as we'll see. It is internally focused, and it is managed on managing transactions, the logistics flow and the financial flow. So what is an ERP then? How does it differ? An ERP is, again, an integrated tool that helps you manage and automate transactions between and core business processes, right? Is a centralized tool, so it centralizes data and it helps you streamline processes in your organization. And it basically streamlines those processes across departments. So your supply chain data goes into your finance data. And your customer relationships are also matched to those different data entities. So you know which customer bought what, and your finance department knows who to invoice what amount. The core ERP features that is pretty stable and mature. So it's it's the core of many organizations. ERP software, as we know it, has been online and live for quite some time. So this is a mature market which has a mature set of product features. But we often see that the core set of features of an ERP is extended with all kinds of customizations, plugins, integrations, etc., which leads to some interesting cases when you want to upgrade, for example. Selecting the right ERP, right? It has a spelling mistake, but selecting the right ERP is therefore complicated. And that differs from selecting the right PIM, which is complex. So when we contrast the two, and here you can see the difference, you see it is either a transaction and core business process focused tool or a product process and product data focused tool. It is either a centralized tool that is stable and mature, or a highly configurable tooling adaptable to your organization. And selecting the right ERP is complicated. Selecting the right PIM is complex. So what does that actually mean? What do I mean by saying complex or complicated? A complicated setting is, well, complicated. It is difficult to understand well, but it is structured and it is knowable. So there's a clear process or steps from stage A to stage B, and getting to know the whole overview does take time, but it is knowable in the end. It differs from the complex system, where different interactions are interacting to different steps or different entities within the whole structure, and there's multiple relationships that also feed into each other. So you don't really know how to predict which step will influence which other step. It is therefore much more complex, and also it is complicated because it is difficult to understand, and it's complex because it is really hard to predict how all the different pieces fit into each other. And that means you need to have a different approach to the solution. So if you have clear and unambiguous solutions with a clear, known, and proven solution, so the bottom left hand of this corner or of this graph, you see that there's a simple way to deal with it. You can basically work with it with traditional tools and traditional software development methods. Basically, an ERP would fit this really well. It fits more in the complicated layer, possibly. So yes, the requirements might be a bit more unclear and a bit more ambiguous, and that might differ from organization to organization. So there is some customization or some configuration happening, but the approach still is clear and known and proven, while a PIM runs along more of the complex angle. So it is either well, an unclear or ambiguous requirements that are within the organization, and the solution might be a bit more unclear or untested as well. That also requires different approaches to finding the right PIM or finding the right ERP. So where do you start, really? If you are considering a digital transformation, you're considering replatforming different solutions, you're replatforming your ERP or your PIM, or you want to make your product data process more efficient, where do you actually start? You might be, and maybe when do you start? So you might be considering to replace your ERP because it is being upgraded to a new release, or you're maybe 2 or 3 upgrade cycles behind, and your current version is no longer supported. You have outgrown your ERP, right? You started maybe 10, 15 years ago with an ERP focused on entry-level companies, but now you are definitely mid-market and you have no longer a team of 30, but it's actually a team of 300 that it needs to manage, or it needs to manage multiple businesses. You have outgrown your previous ERP, so you need to select a new one. Or, and this is not an exaggeration, you are still hosting your ERP on premises on 30-year-old hardware. And this is something we have seen more often than we'd like to admit. And it can lead to all kinds of problems downstream. Basically, companies trying to cling on to that ERP because, yes, the transition is painful, but it can lead to unexpected and, well, especially painful downtimes if it doesn't really work anymore, because it will fail in the end and it is no longer supported. So that means that you should actually start considering replatforming, or maybe you should start replatforming as soon as possible, right away. Might also be a combination of the factors above, right? You might have an on-premise solution that is definitely you need to upgrade to a new release, but basically, well, you know you need to upgrade. Well, you probably know when you need to upgrade, and you probably have been delaying that step for quite some time. At least in my personal experience, it is not something companies look forward to. You can start with ERP, or you can start with PIM, right? So you're doing your digital replatforming, you're doing your digital transformation. Do you start with PIM or do you start with ERP? You should start with an ERP if there might be critical regulatory requirements that are changing, and you really need to support those within the timelines that are allotted to you. So you have a certain deadline. That could be the 1st of Jan when there's a new regulation going into effect. Maybe the digital product passport, maybe something else. And you really need to support that feature or you might face the consequences. Might be a good reason to start with ERP because there's a clear deadline. You might want to start with ERP when there's low complexity within the organization. So when you have a small organization with less than 30 employees, might be less than 20, might be less than 10, might be less than 100, depends a bit on the situation. Or your product complexity is low, right? You have a simple set of products that really don't need much enrichment or that don't need any, I would say, rich copywriting or images or data. Then it might make sense to just start with ERP and keep all that product data in ERP. Or when there's an architectural instability, like we discussed on the previous slide, if your setup is unmanageable and it will become a critical business risk, you need to start with ERP. Like, there's no question about it. You need to start fixing it. And it might make sense to start with ERP first. But there's also definitely reasons to start with a PIM first, right? So you might want to do that digital transformation. You have a roadmap for your ERP transformation or your ERP replatforming. You know that it is in 2027 when your current version goes end of life. You have some time. Then maybe, and especially if you're active in wholesale or retail because you have a large product database and you want to enrich those products, you might want to start with PIM. And you might want to start right now. So you can start with the selection and implementation of a PIM now so that it is live when you need to start selecting a new ERP. And you know how that future architecture looks, so you can find an ERP that fits that future architecture perfectly. 2 years out is, I think, a good deadline for that time. So if you know you have to select a new ERP in, let's say, 2026, you should definitely start now with maybe a PIM discovery and PIM selection. If you have high product complexity, you should definitely start with PIM. ERPs are not built to manage highly complex product with lots of attributes, lots of different assets and images and videos. That is not what ERPs are built for. Taking that complexity out, taking that product complexity out, because you have those highly complex products or you're managing multiple product data models, multiple categories of products, will definitely help you ease that transition from your current ERP to your next one. So you're doing yourself a favor by switching all that data to a PIM and selecting a new PIM right now. You should start with PIM if you have a highly extended ERP. So when you're running multiple plugins or customizations or extensions, or you have this layer of, I would say, features that are basically interfacing with your ERP, you have basically just encapsulated that ERP in a outer layer. You might want to start with PIM first because, again, that takes all the product complexity out of your ERP and making sure that the architecture is ready definitely helps selecting a new ERP as well. It makes the process a lot easier. And we discussed iPaaS, the integration platform as a service, before. Selecting an iPaaS then also definitely will help you ease into that new ERP selection because it reduces the number of connections you need to make and manage and maintain. That also helps you make that move and that transition from the current ERP to the next one a lot easier. And then again, if you are currently facing a long and complex process of bringing your products to market, you feel you can increase the time to market or decrease the time to market, obviously. Make sure that that process is a lot more simple. And it definitely makes sense to start with a PIM, right? That has direct impact on the business. It is not a complicated multi-year process, or it shouldn't be. And so it brings business value within 12 months or even maybe within 6 months. Could definitely help you bring value before you start incurring the costs of a digital transformation and ERP replatforming. And it does have clear benefits. We touched on these before maybe, but reduces the complexity of the ERP replatforming, taking all that product complexity out of your ERP, moving product attributes to your PIM, moving the relationships to your PIM, connecting your PIM to the different output channels, really helps in reducing that complexity and helps you make an easier ERP transition. A fit-for-purpose architecture, a clean architecture with best-of-breed tools, is a lot easier to manage and maintain than a monolithic situation with all kinds of customizations and plugins on a single core technology stack, right? So finding the right tooling for the right purpose definitely helps you improve your processes. It supercharges your marketing. So selecting a new PIM and starting with a PIM really helps you free up resources in your marketing department and helps you bring products to market more quickly, more efficiently, but also more consistently, right? So it makes sure that you have the same customer journey across all your different digital channels. And then maybe even the light dam that is included in most PIMs definitely helps you connect that image database and related documents to one single source. You can select a dedicated DAM, a digital asset management tool, and that is something you might want to consider, especially if you're maybe 500 million plus euro yearly revenue organization, or you're big enough that it does make sense. But many PIMs actually come with a dedicated, a small DAM. So it's not a dedicated DAM, but it's a small DAM already built into the tool. And having a small DAM that is focused on managing all that product data and that product content specifically, make sure you don't have, I don't know, Google Drive folders full of images or maybe SharePoint folders with all kinds of videos that are managed by some person individually who, if they leave a lot of, I would say, mess to be cleaned up. You want to have that structured, and a PIM can definitely bring all that structure. So what should you do? What are my recommendations? Start with the end in mind, and we do that in 2 different versions. So start with the end in mind for your IT architecture. Look at the ambitions for the coming 5 years, your business ambitions for the coming 5 years. Look at your current IT architecture and look at how it should look in the future and how that could support your journey. Then start looking at what the gaps are between the current organization and the current architecture and your future ambitions. Maybe you need to replatform your ERP. Maybe you don't even need to replatform your ERP. You thought you did, but adding a PIM or adding a dedicated pricing tool or promotion tool or adding a dedicated DAM alleviates so many of your problems that you don't need a new ERP. That starting with the end in mind is also how I would approach the architecture process, the process or the architecture. So start backwards with your output channels. How do you want to serve your customers? Start with your customers. What kind of data do you need, and in which format does your customer need it? Design the process and design your architecture with that output as the endpoint, as the start point, really. And consider a PIM first data process. Creating your products in PIM might seem new and different and maybe a bit illogical, especially since most people are used to creating products in your ERP or creating your products in a PLM. But starting with products in your PIM definitely brings a lot of benefits. And especially if you have large catalogs or long tail catalogs, it is definitely something worth considering. If you're a wholesaler or a retailer, you might not be able to, or you might not be actually actively selling all your products, and you have a lot of that data sitting in your ERP. If you're replatforming and if you're doing a digital transformation, it might even make sense to review that whole product data process as well, and starting with PIM instead of with ERP. And we'll look at how that looks in the coming slides. Because how does a product is born? How is a product born? Where is it born in your organization? Where's the genesis? And how does it flow through your organization? What are the different structures? So traditionally, we see that all products are born in your ERP, maybe your PLM if you have one, but usually it's the ERP. And then it is being pushed throughout the organization into a PIM and then into the downstream channels. You can see the graph on the right-hand side. It starts with your ERP or your PLM, maybe some other but that's where product data starts. You have your master data there, and then you start enriching that master data in your PIM. So this standard situation with the ERP as the starting point is the default, right? So you have the ERP, you add a PIM to it, and you basically put it behind the ERP. It receives data from the ERP, maybe it feeds back into the ERP as well. But it helps because it follows your existing processes and tools. You just need to reconnect some tools maybe and some solutions. And it does definitely help in removing that product complexity that we have discussed previously from your ERP. You see that we have sort of a model architecture on the right-hand side. You see that the ERP is at the beginning. That's where the product is born. And you see how it pushes the product data to the PIM, and from the PIM to the different downstream channels. And you see how it pushes the product to the pricing or promotion tooling, and how that is adding prices to your e-commerce system and to your different marketplaces, right? We do recommend pulling that apart, and a PIM is not a promotion management tool. There's some disadvantages, so there's no single source of truth for all the product data. There is still a difference between what might be available in your ERP and in your PIM, and it might be unwieldy for the long tail catalogs, right? So all your products, even if you're managing hundreds or thousands or even millions of SKUs, they need to exist in your ERP first, and that might lead to a bulky setup. So that's why PIM first could actually be a very interesting solution as well. So it is a conceptual shift, but it does make your product data setup much more flexible. So it is highly scalable, especially, I mean, PIMs are built for managing large product catalogs. So it is great for long tail models. If you have a marketplace or you're doing drop shipment or having a large wholesale store, if you're configuring products, a PIM might actually be, a PIM first approach might actually be a very interesting way to reduce that complexity within your organization and within your IT architecture. It helps keep the product complexity away from the ERP, right? So all that complexity is managed in a PIM that is, well, fit for purpose. It is built to manage all that complexity. And there's one true single source of truth for all product data. All the product data fits into your PIM, and that's where all the data is kept. Does have some disadvantages because it requires a change in the way of working, right? It is definitely a change in how the process runs, and that will definitely require some changes in your IT architecture and in also your product data processes. So your people will have to learn how to manage products differently. So having shared all the information, how do you now proceed? We have, as PIM vendors, a lot of information on our website, and we also have some free tools that you can use to explore next steps. So if you're considering a new PIM, you want to have a free shortlist of different PIM solutions that would fit your IT architecture best, I would say grab a cup of coffee and go through our full scan. It's a free scan using an independent algorithm that matches your product requirements, your product data requirements, your PIM profile to our vendor database. We have about 50 vendors in that database. You'll get a free consultation either by me or by my co-founder, and within 10 to 20 minutes, you'll be able to fill that whole survey in, and you'll get a free tailored and independently tailored shortlist of PIM solutions. You could also go and take a look at our cost calculator. So we have a calculator that takes into account all the different, let's say, input variables that drive cost. If you want to get an indication for the current budgeting rounds of what a PIM could cost, and that means total cost of ownership, so not just the licensing, but also implementation, design, the whole maintenance part of the PIM. The cost calculator that we have developed gives a good indication of the order of magnitude of a PIM implementation for your organization. So it takes all kinds of different drivers for complexity. That is usually the cost driver as well, but also your size and quantity, and takes that to build a custom, well, total cost of ownership structure for your PIM. And then I promised I had a special offer. We have our PIM report the PIM Report 2024. And this is a special offer only for people watching live. I will edit this out of the video in the video that goes live on YouTube, that we publish on YouTube. Scan the QR, fill in your details, and you can request a free PIM report. It doesn't include the PIM cost estimate. I was a bit last minute with this free offer, but I thought I'd share it anyway. It does give an overview of the different trends in PIM, where to start your implementation, and it has the overview of all our different partners in a nice hard copy format. I have a bunch of them right here, but not within reach, and it is a great read, especially on the summer vacation maybe. So scan the QR code, fill in the survey, and request your free copy. I'll make sure to send it on time for your summer holidays. Final chance to scan it, and it is gone. All right, so pimvendors.com. If it hasn't been already made clear during the rest of the presentation, we can help you select the right PIM or support you during your product data challenges. And we do that by sitting in between I would say the more technically focused developers and implementation partners of PIM and the business, the users of PIM. So whether that is a retailer, a wholesaler, or a manufacturer, we understand your business needs and we can translate that to the different solutions a vendor might bring. If you want to take some next steps after this session, you want to explore maybe our website and discover all the free articles that we have there, maybe recordings of our previous sessions on either YouTube or on our website. You can fill in our full scan, as I discussed, and you can also directly schedule a free call with Chris or with me if you want. You can visit the link on our website or click on the link on our website and schedule a free consultation. If you're at it, you can also take a look at our LinkedIn right now and follow us, and you'll stay up to date on all the different things we'll be doing. We'll have a new event in August, for example, again on product data and AI. So if you want to stay tuned on when that is, definitely follow us either on LinkedIn or sign up for the newsletter on our website. And if you have any questions after this call, and I'll make some time for the Q&A and answer the question that is now currently open. But you can also reach out to us directly. So either to me on my email or on Chris. And of course, you can also find me on LinkedIn and definitely send me a personal message there as well. Now, we have some questions. We have a question in the chat, and I'll take a look at that right now. If you have any questions right now, and you're open to sharing them in the public chat, just drop them in the chat and I'll take a look at them. I can't promise I can answer them all or I can answer them right away, but otherwise I'll get back to you after the session has ended. So now, or if you don't want to share your question publicly, you can also just send me a message privately. That's fine as well. So Marco asks whether we can give a overview of the PIM enrichment process and different services. So let's stop the presentation, actually. Here we are. Well, the PIM enrichment process depends a bit on the organization, right? So you want to make sure your product, the product data that you're sending to your downstream channels, that could be your own internal channels, that could be marketplaces, externally, that could be customers. You want to make sure that that is I would say, an enriched, and the most enriched version of the product you can publish. That covers different processes, right? So you need to add images. You want to add maybe multiple images of the product, not just a pack shot, but maybe also a more inspirational setting where you have the product in a natural setting. You want to add maybe a video or 360-degree shot of the product. You want to add all kinds of commercial product description, and that might be descriptions of the product in action, and that might include a short description and a long description, because some websites offer the ability to have both short and long descriptions. It includes the SEO and descriptions and the SEO titles. So if your product if your product is published on an e-commerce store, Google has some very strict rules when it comes to making sure your product listing in their organic results is as nice as possible, and you want that it has the right description and the right title, and that it is tagged correctly. And there are different kinds of services that can help you get to that enriched product, right? So that could be AI tools to help you create those descriptions automatically and make sure that those descriptions match the different rules that each field has, right? So the short description might be only 144 characters, or the Google product data title might only be 70, or you might have a marketplace that forces you to, I don't know, send them 3 unique selling points that you do not have on your own site, but the marketplace requests it, so you can use AI to generate those USPs from your description and from your attributes. That are different tools that can help you with that enrichment. And of course, a PIM sometimes includes those tools. Sometimes there's external tools that can help you with that. And there's actually a whole slew of them that we're going to discuss in the PIM and AI session, or product data and AI session, in August. So be sure to check that out. There's translation services, right? So Google Translate, but also DeepL, ChatGPT now with their translations through Gen AI. I would say that is definitely some of the enrichment services that you could use. Maybe external photography services that you want to connect. Yeah, that's I would say a good overview. I hope that answered the question. I don't see any other questions coming in right now. As discussed, like, if you want more information, you can definitely find that on our website. No worries, Marco. You can definitely find more info on our website, and definitely connect with me after the session if you want some more information as well. We can schedule a quick call. We can set up a one-on-one. Maybe I can introduce you to different solutions, either through our algorithm, through our survey, or even directly. Let me know what you're struggling with, and I'll put you in the right direction. I would say, for everyone going on holidays in the coming weeks, have a good holiday. Enjoy, hopefully, a good weather. And if you're not, I would say, I hope you enjoy a good weather as well. And I hope to see you all back in the beginning of August, when we have the Product Data and AI session 2, again with Hendrik van Zwol, here on LinkedIn and on YouTube. And I hope to see you there. Have a good day, and